Well, good morning, and welcome to the 2019 Environmental Congress. I have the unenviable task of following that amazing a cappella group from Out of Soul. For those of you who were here between 8:30 and 9 and had the pleasure of listening to them, let's just give them a standing round of applause. I just want to take a quick minute to offer a couple thank yous before we get into the program. First, I want to thank Minnesota State University Mankato for hosting us here today. I want to thank all of you who took the time to drive here today, and given the weather conditions, and I also want to thank the staff who worked hard to put this event together. You'll notice if you have a little blue ribbon that. And you have a question, please go and seek out a staff volunteer. We can help you throughout the day should you need anything. My name is Will Seifert. I'm the Executive Director for the Minnesota Environmental Quality Board. The EQB is a hub for interagency coordination and a platform for public dialogue on priority environmental issues. We strive to engage Minnesotans in meaningful conversations regarding the future of our environment. I can't think of a more critical and challenging issue that confronts Minnesota today than climate change, the theme for today's Environmental Congress. Board members on the EQB are leaders of 9 state agencies and citizen volunteers from across the state who work side by side to enhance Minnesota's environmental quality for current and future generations. I'd like to ask now the EQB members to stand up. All right, thank you, board members. Many of the EQB members will be on stage later in the day as part of the leadership forum. EQB members will be participating in sessions and dialogues throughout the day. I invite you to introduce yourself to a board member and share your perspectives and ideas on climate change or any other issues that are of concern to you. And as a side note, we are currently asking for applications right now to fill a vacancy on the board. So if you live in the 4th Congressional District and are interested in volunteering for a 4-year term, please let us know. Also, there's information at the front desk if you want to follow up on that. As I mentioned earlier, today at the Environmental Congress, our focus is exclusively on climate change. We're here to learn about climate change and its impacts in Minnesota, to showcase innovative climate change work happening across the state, and to invite you to engage in dialogue about building a healthy future for our communities, wildlife, lands, and waters. Another interesting feature of today's event is the EQB is engaging Minnesotans through the Emerging Environmental Leadership Initiative. So we partnered with 3 organizations to bring youth voice to the Congress this year. One group developed the postcard project, which you saw when you entered the ballroom. One group developed a plenary speech, and you'll hear shortly from Sydney. And another organized one of the breakout sessions. I encourage you to read more about their efforts on the table tents and in your program, and introduce yourself to the emerging environmental leaders that are here today, whom we affectionately refer to as EELs. Maybe at this time I might ask if you are one of these wonderful EELs, if you could just stand up and be recognized. A quick change to the plenary I just want to call out. Unfortunately, Grace Goldtooth fell ill and is unable to join us this morning. So we're going to go directly after Commissioner Bishop. We'll go directly to Ms. Kate Brauman. We're excited to have everyone here at Minnesota State University Mankato, as well as those watching us on live stream, as we join together as a state to address climate change. I'd like to now introduce EQB Chair Laura Bishop. Chair Bishop also serves as Commissioner of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and has worked as an executive in both the private and public sector, motivating diverse coalitions to achieve results. We are fortunate to have Chair Bishop's experience and dedication to climate change issues. Please welcome Commissioner Bishop. Chair Bishop.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and see so many familiar faces and a lot of new faces. I especially love to see the voices of the young people represented, and thank you especially to our EELs for all of your work. It really adds a lot to our discussions when we engage our future generations, and so thank you very much for being here. On behalf of Governor Walz and the Environmental Quality Board, I want to welcome all of you to the 2019 Environmental Congress. We are very excited about this and to be able to really put a pin in on addressing climate change. So ensuring that this whole discussion is about climate change, but also that the agenda for the EQB in this coming year also focuses on climate change. And as we know, climate change is affecting so many Minnesotans, and we are looking for solutions. We are looking for innovative ideas to come to the surface from all sectors of our economy, as well as from our environmental leaders here in this room. We appreciate the diverse backgrounds and diverse perspectives and need that to be successful in moving ahead on the climate change agenda. So, these and other issues related to climate, whether it's our farming and what we see in extreme weather events all over the state that are impacting our farmers, but also putting extreme pressures on our cities and municipalities in controlling this, what once was a 500-year weather event and rain event, and now what is a 5-year rain event. We know that we have to take action now. So I've been really pleased to see the governor take a leadership role on this. Yesterday, the governor announced the establishment through executive order of the Climate Subcabinet. This is comprised of 15 different state agencies and really putting a mark on this administration in a positive way to really get together and tackle climate change through all of our state agencies. This isn't just your normal 5 agencies of trying to address climate. This is 15 because he wanted to take a broad perspective and really knows that each agency has a role in addressing climate change and coming up with policy to do so. So we've had a couple real initiatives that we've rolled out as an administration, including Clean Cars Minnesota, which will require manufacturers to bring in more low emissions and electric vehicles into the state. This is in active rulemaking right now, and the comment period ends on December 6th on Friday. So if you have an interest in this and want to submit comments, you can do that online. In addition, the administration has also rolled out last year, introduced legislation on 100% clean energy, and you'll hear more about that later today. But these are just 2 of the things right now that are real hallmarks of leadership that the governor is taking active approach on addressing climate change, among others that we're doing within the agencies. And we need the legislature to also act on these things, so we will be looking to all of you for your help in speaking to lawmakers as well and really ensuring that the issue and addressing climate change becomes a focal point for them as well as this administration. So the other piece that the executive order did is it established an advisory council to the governor on climate change. So now on the Secretary of State's website, there is a link to apply for the Governor's Advisory Council. They'll be accepting 15 members to the Advisory Council and for the appointment process, which will help to advise as well the subcommittee in putting together a report and putting together policies and strategies on climate change. So we look for your active participation. So beyond today, there's much more to do. Certainly the EQB leads and will be doing a lot of work on climate over the coming, actually in our work plan for the next 2 years. So we want your participation there, but also if you'd like to apply for any different issue or any different roles, either on the Governor's Advisory Council for climate change or the Governor's Advisory Council to the MPCA or the MPCA's Environmental Justice Advisory Group, we have openings on all those and would welcome your participation. So in today's plenary, we are going to hear from broad perspectives on climate change. And it is really my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker. So Dr. Kate Brauman is here, and we asked Dr. Brauman to be here today to give us a sense of the current climate science. We need to stay on top of it to understand how it will impact us here in Minnesota. And so Kate moved here from California to Minnesota a decade ago and was appropriately terrified of winter, she says. But she fell for Minnesota anyway and even embraced broomball for a few years. As did I, but I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. Kate loves studying water, and she's usually the person you'll find who will make you pull over the car because she needs to take a good picture of that irrigation ditch right there along the road. So I want to introduce Kate to the podium and really thank her for coming today. Thank you, Kate.
So my task today was to provide everyone with sort of a background on climate change, all of it, in the state of Minnesota, in 10 minutes. You know, easy peasy. So I'm going to tell you before I start what I'm going to talk about, which is that climate is already changing in Minnesota, climate is going to keep changing in Minnesota, and climate has and will affect the things that we care about in Minnesota. So this is a very brief overview, and I will be around all day, so I'm happy to answer questions. We know that it's gotten warmer. This is the average total temperature change from 1895 to 2015, and what you can see is that there is a clear trend. It has gotten warmer in Minnesota. It's more in the north than in the south. But I think when we look at this kind of average value for the state, we miss what's really important. Because mostly what's happened is it's gotten warmer in the winter. These numbers that you see on this map on your right are bigger than the average numbers. We're seeing average changes on the order of 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit up north. That might not seem like a lot to you, so I want to show you this information in a slightly different way. What we're looking at here is the number of really cold days that we have, like really cold, minus 35, at the Grand Rapids Forest Research Station. And what you can see is that that number in the 20s and 30s, it happened a lot. And from the 40s through the 90s, it happened some, on average a little less than once a year. We get into the 2000s and the 2010s, and it almost never happens. We just don't see these really, really cold days anymore. And part of what that means, part of what we see is that our cold season is getting shorter. So what you're looking at in this picture is for each day in the middle of the winter, on average, how many degrees below 10 do we expect to see? So bigger means colder, wider means longer, and we have a cold season here. We also have that little dip in January, that fall spring where you get your hopes up. That's real. This is for 1959 to 1978. That, in the light blue, is for 1979 to 1998. It's shorter and it's narrower. Our cold season is not as cold and it's not as long. And if you're paying attention, you can see that there's actually a third set of numbers in there, the 1999 to 2018, and there's nothing on this graph. Because we do not, on average, have days that are colder than 10 degrees anymore. Doesn't mean we don't sometimes have cold days, but on average, that's not what we're seeing in our winter season anymore. So our cold season is getting shorter and it's getting less cold. At the same time, it's getting wetter. This is for the Twin Cities, the average annual precipitation by decade. And you can see that clear upward trend as we get into the 2010s. It's just wetter. It's raining more. We're actually on track to be the wettest decade on record. And we used to really have to say we're projecting that, but it's December now, so we feel pretty confident about this. And it's not just that it's raining more, it's that those storms are bigger. So what you're looking at here is From the 1960s all the way up through the 2000s, what's the frequency relative to the average of big storms, and especially really big storms? And the important takeaway from this is that over there on the right, in the 2000s, all of those bars are bigger, and especially that dark blue bar, those really big, nasty storms, those are happening more and more frequently. And it's something that we expect to keep happening. As we look towards the future, what we see is that these trends keep happening. So it's going to keep getting warmer. What you're seeing here are additional days above 95°F from what we're used to, and there are more of them, especially in this high emission scenario over on the right. It's going to keep getting wetter. So these green colors tell us percentage-wise how much more precipitation we expect to see, and there will be more of it. These numbers aren't as big as we might think they would be, but what's part of what's going to happen is that the way that our rainfall comes is very likely to change. So in the springtime, that's when we're really going to see really wet weather, sort of like we saw this year. And at the same time, there's also a high probability that we're going to see more dryness later in the fall. So at the same time that we see more rain, more big rain events, more wet springs, we could also be seeing more drought. And this is going to have a lot of impacts on the way that we live our lives. So this is a photograph from just this spring. I think a lot of folks are aware of how hard farming was this year when the fields are muddy, when you can't get a tractor into it. And it's not just for farming. We could think about Monoman and the kinds of runoff regimes that we have. There's potential for big changes across the state in terms of the amount of water that's on the landscape. More flooding, especially in cities, is something that we certainly expect to see with these big rainstorms. And it's going to get hotter. That's something that we haven't seen a lot of yet. But we know that heat stress is a big problem, especially for children and older people, especially in cities, but throughout the state, that having more heat causes real physical problems and can actually cause deaths. That winter warming also means that we're going to have a shorter ice season, so less ice fishing for us. In general, this has big impacts on the kinds of ways that we live our lives and what we want to be able to do in Minnesota when we get outside. And it's not just being out on the ice. Those really cold days are part of the reason that we have a lot fewer creepy crawlies here in Minnesota than they do in other places. And so we're already seeing invasive species that could have been controlled by our really cold winters. We're seeing more and more of them, and we expect to continue seeing more of that. And in general, even without invasive species, we're going to see the landscape change. So up north in the boundary waters, we've got boreal forest. We know how it looks. We know what we expect to see in these places. The big woods of Wisconsin look different. And yet, as it gets warmer and wetter, there's a lot of potential for changing landscapes, for actually natural succession and changes that make the way our iconic landscapes look different. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a fan of ragweed. This is totally me during the summer, sneezing. And this is also gonna happen a lot more. And in general, we actually expect to see quite a lot of additional health problems because of what gets into the air when it's hotter and when it's wetter and when we have these shorter winter seasons. So, to summarize, climate has already changed. Climate is going to keep changing, and Minnesotan lives and livelihoods are going to change as a result. We're already seeing some of that, and it's going to keep happening. But I don't want to end on a down note. I want to end on an up note, because we can change this. We can mitigate. So all of those pictures of the future that I showed you, there were 2 maps on all of those pictures. And those were moderate and high emissions. And we can control what emissions look like. We have a role to play. And when we mitigate emissions, we have different outcomes. And we can also adapt. there are ways that we're going to have to change our lives and livelihoods, but that doesn't have to be bad, but it is something we need to plan for. And I have a lot of hope about the future. And a big part of why I have hope is actually because of the next speaker. So our final plenary speaker is Sydney Bauer, and she is a 22-year-old from Jordan, Minnesota. She's one of the Eels. And Sid enjoys making candles, building snow forts, playing Minecraft, and she's never gonna shy away from a dance party. So she believes that sustainability is about relationships. She's excited to take on a new project and make a new friend, and it is because of Sid and the Eels that I feel really positive about what the future holds, and I'm excited to hear from her. Thank you.
Okay, this is kind of a big deal. I'm excited to be here. But before I get started, and because this is a big deal, I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths, and I invite you to join. Okay, we're gonna breathe now. Oh, here it is. That felt good, thank you. Good morning. My name is Sydney Bauer. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Minnesota Morris, where I spent the entirety of my college career working as an energy intern in my campus's Office of Sustainability. I've had the opportunity to work with folks in my community on projects relating to district heating, solar installation, microgrid analysis, battery installation, biomass gasification, and one of my personal favorites, community dialogue. In September, I helped organize Morris's global climate strike. Over 160 people, which is about like 1% of our population, big deal, attended this education and action-based event in small town West Central Minnesota. Thank you. I am continuously thankful for all the folks in my community who include me and my fellow young people in these exciting, transformative projects, one of which being the speech I get to give today. I'm here, like mentioned, representing the Emerging Environmental Leaders, or EELs, as we call ourselves. The Emerging Environmental Leader program was put together by the EQB in order to promote youth voice and presence in protecting Minnesota's environment. Youth voice and presence is all around you today. The EELs put together the postcard projects at your table, which were very exciting for me to see. I was thrilled. How cool. They put together one of the breakout sessions that's happening this morning. I encourage you to attend. It will be great. And they also planned this speech. I am so thankful that I got to be a part of this program. I'm going to check my sheet. I remember. Once again, I'm going to ask all of the EELs to stand up. Sorry, youth. Please stand up again. I want everybody to see. Wait. Don't quite applaud. We've applauded for these EELs. I want you to look at them and see that these are high schoolers, these are college students, these are working young adults who don't have to go to school anymore. They are from all across the state. They are your community members, your neighbors, your leaders. And instead of a round of applause, can we just shout out one big thank you to the EELs for their work today? So you're ready? We're gonna thank them. 3, 2, 1. Thank you! That was not, please. We're thanking the youth. We gotta do it one more time. 3, 2, 1. Thank you! Thank you, EELs. You can sit down now. Minnesota youth, like the EELs in this room, are paying attention to and engaged with many complex issues across the state. A big challenge facing our state being water. Not to say that water is the challenge, for water is what fuels our bodies and our ecosystems, but to say that we're making it challenging for water to be that lifeline. Water challenges we have to tackle include pollution, erosion, access, scarcity, safety. These are all big, dramatic words, and they have direct consequences on Minnesota communities. These challenges are things that our community leaders and representatives have to make decisions on. Young people expect that the outcomes of those decisions ensure that the environment we have tomorrow is better, not worse, than the one we have today. I hope to one day be able to take the young people in my life on adventures into the BWCA like my dad, right there, took me. Thanks, Dad. I hope to continue to canoe and swim and fish in waters across the state each summer and also winter. I hope to continue to have access to clean and safe drinking water. The decisions we make today affect my ability and every young person's ability to do those things for the rest of our lives. Another grand challenge we face in this state is energy. Once again, saying that energy is not the challenge. We need energy. How we obtain and use this energy in clean, efficient, locally sourced ways, that's the challenge. Once again, young people want to see our community leaders and representatives make decisions that ensure a healthy environment for generations to come. There's many ways we can do that, all sorts of ways. We could support farmers in installing on-site energy generation systems. We could invest in public transit in greater Minnesota. We could gather with our neighbors and educate ourselves about energy-efficient homes and buildings. We could continue to set bolder renewable energy goals to showcase that Minnesotans understand the catastrophic impact of our fossil fuel emissions. There's many ways we can address the energy challenge. There's many ways in which Minnesota already is. How cool. The important part, though, is that the decisions we make affect my ability and every young person in this room's ability to continue to live on a healthy planet. If you want more examples of complex, kind of scary challenges that youth are paying attention to, I remembered a list. So we got air quality, we got urban sprawl, we got wildlife populations, nitrates, water pollution, transportation, greenhouse gas emissions. The list goes on and on. There are so many complex, systemic challenges, and they will affect my generation for the rest of our lives. Young people know these things. 5-year-olds wrote down on cards that they know some of these things. We're paying attention, yet we're not giving up and throwing in the towel and saying it's too hard. No. We are gathering together and raising our voices. We're putting in the hard work. Young people across the state, thousands of them, went on strike in September, letting you know that they want to be a part of the solution. High schools are putting up solar panels. Composting systems are being enacted in schools. We're running for office. Everywhere you look, projects are being realized and put together by youth. Youth across the state signed up to be a part of the Emerging Environmental Leaders Program to showcase to you that young people are ready and capable of tackling the climate crisis. We're hopeful of our ability to fight this behemoth of an issue, but we know we can't do it alone. So we ask you to hear us, and we ask you to help us. We ask you to stand beside us, empowering us, bringing youth voices into places they need to be heard. We ask you to invite us into your conversations, because together, as an intergenerational, intersectional, radically inclusive Minnesota, we can make smart, holistic, regenerative decisions that benefit all of us, present and future. Youth are ready to engage in these topics. We're ready to learn about systems and about science. We're ready to present to you our ideas and our ideals. So I challenge you today, during breakout sessions this morning or maybe this afternoon during the open space dialogues, introduce yourself to a young person. Wow! Invite them into your conversation. And then, here's the tricky part. Introduce yourself to another young person. Wow, amazing. Ask them what they want to see, what they want you to do. Young people are ready to share with you what they know and what they have to say. They're ready to be a part of the process and of the solution. So ask us, invite us in. Let us know that we can be a part of the system, because we have some pretty good ideas, and we're ready to get to work. Thank you.
Well, that's a big thank you to the plenary speakers who traveled here today to start off our conversations right. Let's give them another round of applause. My name is Faith Krogstad. I'm the engagement coordinator at the Environmental Quality Board. And I've had the pleasure of working with our interagency planning team and many partners to make this day happen. When I think about the messages from our plenary speakers, the music this morning, and by the way, those musicians, they are all students here and they had to go to class after they sing. So a lot of people put a lot of work into this and we're really excited. I'm also very excited to look out around this room and see all of these wonderful people. You all traveled here today. You all have unique perspectives that you bring. And I can't wait to see what kind of ideas come out of this, and I just feel the energy in the room. I should have mentioned, but you are also part of that planning team that I was talking about. By the end of today, you will have shaped our conversation in the leadership forum that we're having after lunch. You are setting the agenda at the open space this afternoon. So thank you for being a part of that planning team. I think we're going to have a great day today. I do have a little bit of logistical stuff to cover. I want to give you an overview of our day, but I do want to let somebody know that their Toyota Prius, which is blue, with license plate 869KPW, left their lights on. Very fitting at our climate conference here. So we know that the people here are the biggest resource that we have. So we designed today to make sure that you had a chance to share your ideas and that you had a chance to connect with each other. So I would actually like us to take a moment and following what Sid suggested, and make sure that you take a moment to meet people at your table if you don't already know someone. If you know everyone at your table, go ahead and introduce yourself to someone neighboring, but let's actually take a moment and go ahead and introduce yourself to the people around you. I'm going to walk you through the arc of the day today. Following this plenary session, we will have some wonderful breakout sessions where you can learn about some innovative things that are happening in Minnesota. We have 7 sessions, and 6 of them are located here on the 2nd floor. Most of them are along this hallway here and the hallway behind. And then one of the sessions is actually located downstairs in the Ostrander Auditorium. So if you go down this hallway and go down a staircase and follow the signs, you'll find it sort of that way on the 1st floor. The sessions, the descriptions of the sessions are found on the tents, the towers on your tables. We also have big signs out in the lobby and at each of the doors. Our website also has the descriptions. Speaking of website, we should also just recognize that we are being live streamed right now. So we have an audience also online across the state, and they will be able to enjoy this plenary as well as the leadership forum after lunch. So the breakout sessions, there are actually 2 sessions that are 45 minutes long, with a break in between. So each session will be repeated. So if you missed it the first time, you might be able to catch it the second time. There is one exception, and that is the Emerging Environmental Leaders session, and that is a 90-minute session. So you would stay for the entire breakout time if you are interested in that session. Following the breakouts, we will have lunch in here starting at noon. You can just come on in and jump in line. You don't have to be polite and wait at your table to be called. No one's going to call you. You better get your food. The breakout, or the buffet lines will be along the side of the room here. There'll be 2 lines through each one. We have vegetarian and vegan options available. And if you need a gluten-free meal, you just need to flag down a kitchen staff member, and they will bring one for you. We are collecting the organic waste back in the kitchen, so a big thanks to the kitchen staff for taking that on. We have also brought organics collection bins that are located in the restrooms around here and out in the hallways. And so we ask you to help us make this a green event and sort your waste into trash, recycling, and organics. So the organics is anything that could be composted. So you don't have to worry about that with your food waste. If the kitchen staff are handling it. Following lunch, here in the ballroom, Governor Tim Walz will be joining us. So he will provide some remarks on climate change, and many members of his cabinet and his climate sub-candidate will be up here on stage, and we'll have a Q&A. And this is a chance where you get to shape that conversation. We will be asking you to submit questions for this Q&A, and you can vote for your favorite question. So the most popular questions will float up to the top. So we will be looking to this list of questions as we go through that forum. And we'll get to practice using the technology for that here in a minute. I should mention the members will be up on stage for the leadership forum. They are the leaders of the Board of Soil and Water Resources, the Departments of Agriculture, Commerce, Natural Resources, and Transportation, the Minnesota Housing and Finance Agency, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So after the leadership forum, we will all head down to the auditorium on the first floor for the open space. And for many of us, an open space could be a new thing. But you can think about it as a really organized coffee break. Many times at conferences, a lot of the most interesting things that come out of it actually happen during those coffee breaks around the refreshments. So the open space today, you will have a chance to suggest a topic that you would like to discuss, and you can volunteer to convene that conversation. We will collect all of those topics and assign them to the breakout rooms, and everyone can choose which room you'd like to go to. If you don't like the session that you've joined, we have the law of 2 feet. You can use your 2 feet to go and find a different session. So we will be collecting notes from each of those sessions and sharing them with everyone. So if you have a fear of missing out, or FOMO, and you go to one and you really wanted to be at another one also, don't worry, we'll be collecting notes and sharing those with everyone at the end of the event. We'll have them online and we'll also email them out to you. After the open space, we'll have a networking hour again here in the ballroom. And you can connect with people from your congressional district or whomever if you wanted to continue your open space conversations. That's great as well. And we'll conclude the event at 5:30. So, through the course of the day, we'll have, information overload, but then you'll have a chance to really process and talk it through with everyone and share the ideas and learn from each other. So we're excited about that. So let's take some time here to practice using Slido, which is an audience participation app. You can use it from your device. You go to slido.com and you enter EQB for the code. If you don't have a device with you today, you could look on with your neighbor, or you could raise your hand and a staff member can help you if you have any trouble with it. If you need to connect to Wi-Fi, MavGuest is the network. There is no password, but you might have to go to a browser and accept the terms. So we have a few polls just to get us warmed up a little bit here. It looks like people are already participating. So the question is, what did you have for breakfast this morning? And it looks like streusel is a popular one today, and coffee, not surprisingly. So as you can see, as people are entering the information, the items that have been repeated are larger, and then the ones that are less common are smaller. So go ahead and enter your breakfast items in there. We'll see how this shakes out. This is called a word cloud in Slido. It looks like we still have a lot of refreshments and coffee, so help yourself. We'll have coffee throughout the day. And also refreshments in the afternoon. I wanted to make sure we had an open space where we actually did have coffee and refreshments so we can recreate that coffee break atmosphere. All right, so we're going to move on to another poll. Now that everyone got through the breakfast conversation, we have a would you rather for you this morning. Would you rather know the history of every object you touch or be able to talk to animals? Oh, yeah, talk with animals, yes. I mean, we can all talk to animals, so having a conversation with an animal, that would be the choice. So as you can see, they actually switched order, and this is what's going to happen when we create our Q&A later. This is what's going to happen if there are popular questions. They will actually start floating up to the top. So be able to talk with animals is the most popular one, so that has gone up to the top. And you can also see how many people are participating. We have 167 people doing this. People can do this from the live stream as well. So people from the live stream can also submit questions for the Leadership Forum this afternoon. All right, that one seems to be solidifying. Talking to animals. Talking with animals is the way to go. All right, our third poll. What is your home zip code? Not necessarily where you're from, because we might have some students in the room, but it might be where you traveled from to get here. And this is interesting for us because we only collected your names, your email addresses, and your phone numbers. So it's hard for us to know actually where people came from. Can someone help me out? Is 56001, is that here? Yes. All right, Mankato wins it. Good job. And Longfellow, apparently, which is a neighborhood in Minneapolis, is also a good one. So our last poll today is, what best describes your work? And this was a tricky one because it would have been great to have many, many categories, but we had to limit it. So just choose the one that most closely fits you. All right, so we've got state, tribal, and federal government way out in front at about 69. A lot of nonprofit and non-governmental organization folks here. A lot of people from the academic world, followed by local government, business and consulting, and entrepreneurial and self-employed. Great, thank you for doing that. So let's walk through how we're going to do the Q&A. So up at the top of your device, you'll see that in the blue area it says polls, but there's also a selection called Q&A. So go ahead and click on that. And that's where you can enter a question for the Leadership Forum. So again, these are leaders of different state agencies, and you can ask them questions about climate change today. We won't have time for all the questions, of course, but we really invite your questions on that. Could we bring up Slido Q&A on the big screens up here? So you can choose to remain anonymous when you submit your question, or you can put your name in. And you'll see that over on the right-hand side, there's little thumbs up signs. You can click on the questions that you like. You can vote for each question one time, and you can vote for as many questions as you want to. So this will be open starting right now. It will be open throughout the day. So if you're sitting at your breakout session and you think of a question for the leadership forum, go ahead and type it in, or you might notice it changing and you might want to check back in and vote for the questions that you like. We will also leave it open during the leadership forum itself, so as the commissioners are answering questions, that might make you think of a new question, you could submit a new one. So you can see, we can only see up on the big screens the top 5, but on your phone you can scroll through and see all of them. Up on the big screens also at the bottom we can see the most recently added question, so the newest question shows up there as well. So if anyone is having any trouble with Slido, go ahead and raise your hand and our staff can run around and give you a hand. Looks like everyone's really figuring it out though very well. Good job. All right, so I'm seeing we have some questions coming through already. Wonderful. So, in closing, my fellow Environmental Congress planners, all of you, I really invite you today to think about what you bring to the table. Maybe you're coming from a different part of the state. Maybe you are coming from a different sector. Maybe your life experiences are different from the person next to you, and those are all really important to share. Everyone here in this room is really important in this day and in this conversation. I also want you to be curious about each other and what we can learn from everyone around us. And I would also invite you to begin to imagine what more we can be doing together in Minnesota for climate change. We have a lot of work to do for climate change. We have a lot to cover today. Our breakout sessions start at 10:10, and we'll have just a few extra minutes here to just orient yourself to the venue and find where the rooms are that you need to go to. We've got refreshments here. So I hope you enjoy the day. We'll see you back here in the ballroom at noon. Thank you.